We're at the 2019 Kendal Mountain Festival with Dierdre Wolownick, also known as Alex Honnold's mum, but I think if you read her book you'll realise that she's a remarkable woman in her own right, so we're not going to spend as much time talking about Alex, but we're going to talk about Dierdre. So originally your book, The Sharp End of Life, was intended to be a story about raising Alex, but
it did start out that way.
Into telling your story. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, raising Alex was quite different than raising a normal child, and so I started writing about that experience when he was little, and he's now 34. So it has evolved greatly, you know. It was my mom's experience back then. And then I began to realize just how different it really was from the usual mom's experience. And then when I started to approach publishers and editors and stuff about it, they all had the same thing to say. They all sent it back saying, these are wonderful stories, but we want your story, you know. And I had never thought of that. You know, I'm not the type of person to talk about myself or you know, but they all said that, and so I started to think about what parts of my story would be interesting, and to what groups of people, to what kind of people, and kind of evolved into this.
So your early life, you had to care for your mother who suffered with polio, but you were really artistic and creative, but you seem very independent as a young child. How do you think your early life shaped your later life, and perhaps how you brought up Alex?
Well, that's of everyone. This is true. Your early life does shape, you know, how you approach life and how you deal with it later. Yeah, the independence helped because both of my children are extreme athletes, and
Stasia's a runner.
Yeah, Stasia's sports of choice are long distance running and long distance cycling. But she's also a very good climber. She climbs better than I do. Everybody climbs better than I do. I'm not a very good climber, but I do have a great time at it. So yeah.
You became the oldest woman to climb El Capitan.
I did.
Tell us about that. First of all, how did you get into climbing?
That's a long story. Well, I had this son, you see, who was getting famous, and I'd see pictures of him on magazines and inside magazines and on advertisements, and he'd go off and do these expeditions that I didn't know really what his life consisted of. And he would come back from these expeditions and tell me, oh, we did this, we did that, and we used this gear, and I didn't know what any of it meant. And I'm a language teacher, I've always been, and I like to understand what's going on around me and what the words mean and all that. And being cut off from that jargon, that vocabulary, I wasn't really part of his life, you know, at all. So I wanted to remedy all that, and climbing, being introduced to climbing helped remedy that, you know, helped give me a far better understanding of what he did when he left the house.
I really liked you talk about learning the language of climbing, but it also seemed like a means for you to communicate with Alex, to grow a stronger bond with Alex in some way.
Yeah, well, Alex's entire life is climbing, and so if you don't speak climbing at all, you're not part of his life. Very simple, you know, so I wanted to.
Did you take to climbing quite easily, or did you?
Yes, I was a climber type when I was a little girl, but I wasn't supposed to be. I was supposed to wear dresses and frilly lace and things and be a little girl and behave myself. And so, and you know, I had to help my mother all the time anyway, and so my independence was in my own head for many years. You know, I couldn't let it out, as it were. But, and then I got so busy, you know, I'm a full-time teacher, and I was a writer, part-time writer, and this and that. I was a tour guide, and I was always working. Yeah, I was always working, and 2 kids and several houses to take care of. Just never had time for anything for me. And then little by little, all that kind of went away, and I did have time, and I did still want to know what his life was like.
When Alex was growing up, he was very boisterous and really energetic and would climb a lot, and people would say to you, can't you control your son? Tell us what your response was.
Yes, we heard that in many playgrounds. I heard that in many playgrounds, because he would go out and do these wild things on the monkey bars, or the jungle gym, whatever you call it here. What do you call it here?
Tumble tops, probably.
Tumble tops, okay, whatever. Or on the trees, or on the brick buildings next to the park, or whatever. And the other little kids wanted to follow him and couldn't. Very simple. Like most of us can't follow him now, And so their mothers would take that personally. And so many times I heard things like, can't you control your son? He's a bad example. And from their point of view, he was a bad example. He was doing things that little boys of this size shouldn't be able to do or be encouraged to do. And it's not that I encouraged him to do any of this, but that's all he wanted to do. So we went to the playgrounds, that's what he did. So I just learned to block that out. I had to learn that other people's norms were not my son's norms, and there's nothing I could do about that. I just had to accept it.
And you write about climbing, having roles, and leader and belayer, and how you kind of switched roles from mother and child. Alex was leading you up
right.
and showing you the ropes. Right. How was that?
The first few times I climbed with him was fascinating from that point of view. He was in charge. My little boy was in charge, and I was the toddler, as it were. I didn't know what to do, I didn't know how to do it, and especially in several of our first climbs were in bad weather, and I really didn't know what to do or how to do it. And so it was a complete role reversal. And this is something that every parent should experience. It gives you a far better understanding of what it's like to be a kid, and B, how to deal with that from both points of view. It's a fascinating education.
You say that we're both as stubborn as we need to be. Did that kind of come out in the climbing when you were climbing?
It came out ever since he was born. Because he was as stubborn then as he is now. I mean, you have to be very, very stubborn. Is probably not the best word for it. Tenacious, shall we call it? You have to be very tenacious to do climbs like he does. You have to really just commit and not give up and not back off, And he was like that when he was 2 and 1, but I didn't know. I didn't understand where that came from or what kind of person that was going to turn out to be, So, it was fascinating. It was fascinating.
You talk about you feeling the sublime, and you say that through climbing you felt that even more strongly than when you were doing art, music, or reading literature. Can you describe how you kind of perceive?
Well, all you climbers out there, you get this. Climbing is almost entirely cerebral. It's the only sport I've encountered, because I've done many sports in my life, and I've always been very active, and biking and running and swimming and all that stuff. But this is the only sport I've encountered that's to a large extent cerebral. You have to figure out problems, you have to understand the physics of it. If I turn this way, where will my weight go? And if I fall on this rope, where will my weight take it? And if I place a piece here and the rope goes there, then what? It's reasoning, which appeals to me and my son and my daughter, all of us. So it's a different kind of sport in that.
There's a great story in your book that you wrote about Alex asking you to draw pictures from his imagination, but you can't quite get it right. It's never spot on, and he gets frustrated, and that seems to come out in his climbing. He maps out his free solo.
Yes. He's a very, very visual. Visual. There's visual 2D and there's visual 3D, and he's totally 3D. He knows exactly where his body is, where his feet are at every moment, and he knows how far he'll have to reach, and he just understands the three-dimensionality of climbing. And that's pretty rare. I mean, not everybody gets it to that degree, And he was like that when he was a kid, so everything, all the stories he would tell, when I would draw them from what he would say, It was never right, because he knew exactly how it was supposed to look, and I just didn't do it right.
Alex never tells you about his solo ascents before he does them.
I don't think any free soloist does
Yeah,
that.
probably.
Yeah.
But can you tell us a bit about when you soloed Freerider, how you found out about?
I talked to him while he was still on the top. He called me. I was in the car driving like from Sacramento to Portland, which is a 10-hour drive nonstop, just straight up I-5. And we had pulled off into a rest area, and my daughter told me by text that what he had just done. And so I don't remember if I called him or immediately, or if he called me, one or the other. And we chatted from the top.
How did it make you feel to know?
Oh, yes, I stayed there a while. I stayed there a while. I was with another couple, friends from France. We were going up to see my daughter in Portland. And their parents also. And they left me alone. It takes a while to wrap your head around something like that. It's still, I was still busy wrapping my head around something like that. It's an amazing thing he did, especially now that I've been on it myself, and I saw firsthand over and over exactly what that entails, and it's just impossible for most people to digest what he did.
How did you feel? How did that make you think about the solo when you were up there? Were you kind of reimagining?
Well, no, I've seen videos of some of the previous solos, and I have had a fairly good idea. It's just the location of this one that was so extraordinary. I mean, most of you have probably seen El Cap on video, or unless you've been there. But it's an extraordinary place. It's just 3,200 feet straight up, this vertical granite wall, and it's beautiful. I was awed by the beauty of the wall. I did not expect. I just expected, it's rock, it's gray rock. It's not gray. It's got every color in the rainbow in it, and it's swaths of color and swirls of color. It's just beautiful. And you get a sense of that to some extent in the movie Free Solo. You can see the gold almost looks like waterfalls of gold.
When the sun hits
running.
it.
Yeah. That was a surprise to me, how beautiful it is.
Did the physical aspect of climbing El Capitan, how did you deal with that?
The physical aspect, extremely physical.
Yeah.
I trained for 18 weeks. I asked him, we did a route called Royal Arches, like a month before that. And Royal Arches is a big wall, technically. A lot of people take more than a day on it. And I believe it's 15 pitches, 16 if you go off the back and 15 if you wrap down, abseil, down the front. So we did that, and we did it in okay time. We were down by dinner time, and so I'm all the way down. I remember thinking, I just did a big wall in Yosemite. I wonder if I could do that other big wall just down the road 2 miles, And I'm thinking, because, as a climber, everybody fantasizes about being able to do something like that. And so I fantasized until I got up the guts to ask him, because every year for my birthday he takes me up something. It's in September, and September is season in Yosemite, so I'm lucky that way. So I asked him, Alex, do you think maybe someday you could get me up El Cap? I really didn't expect him to say yes, because I'm not a very good climber, and I know it's hard climbing. But I didn't know about jugging back then.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was. I'd heard the term. Again, there's that language thing. I'd heard it, people using the term. I didn't know what it meant. And so he said, oh, yeah, sure. That's what he says every year when I ask him, can we go up this or that? He always says, yeah, sure. And his yeah, sure means, yeah, you're willing to learn enough to do it. You got the willingness. Sure, let's go do it. Said, yeah, sure, but you have to learn how to jug. And so I said, okay. And then he left, and then I said about finding out what jugging was and what I needed, gear-wise and all that. And I learned how to jug. So I trained for 18 weeks. I went to Yosemite for 18 weeks, 3 days a week. I had a place to stay at a ranger's house, so it made that easy.
You practiced on the hot pitches?
Practiced on, the first day of each week I did vertical hiking. you know, up the south wall, up to Glacier Point from the valley floor, 3,000 plus foot gain, you know, and first time I did it, I couldn't finish it, and then I finished it, and then I got a little bit faster, so I trained the cardio, you know, the first day. And then the second 2 days, I trained on the descent ledges. To the east side of El Cap, there are the descent ledges on top and ropes on the bottom. There are fixed ropes, 6 of them. And so I practiced jugging up and down, you know, lowering off. And the other day I practiced on the heart lines, which is the same basic deal, 6.5 ropes on that side, on the other side of El Cap.
And what does Alex think of you climbing? Is he quite happy to have you?
I don't know. You'll have to ask Alex. When we're together, it's either a crowd scene like this, and I don't get to really talk with him, or we're just together to climb something, or it's I don't know. I don't know what he thinks about it. I can only imagine, but I'm sure I'm wrong.
And obviously his profile has increased drastically since free solo. How is he coping with that? And is that
How is he coping with that?
And how do you
like he copes with everything.
Yeah, takes it in.
Very even keeled, yeah, takes it in stride. He just rearranges his life around all the events and stuff. Every city he's in, he goes to the indoor climbing gym, as we call it, climbing wall, and works on his own training. He says he's getting stronger and better, so he puts it to his advantage.
And what's your next project? Have you got any other?
Oh yes, I always have projects. Always have plans, dreams anyway. Well, this year I've been waylaid by surgery. I had surgery on my foot, and massive surgery, and I'm still working on training it to walk again normally, and I still can't run yet. So little by little, I haven't been able to climb much. I can get back on the wall now. I can put my shoes back on and get back on the wall, but just for very easy stuff. So my big goal this year is to get back to normal, whatever normal is. And I would, now that I've experienced climbing a big wall, I would, because Alex and I, when you go with Alex, you always go fast, really fast. Because he holds all the speed records all over Yosemite. And so when we climbed El Cap, on my first venture on El Cap, we did it in a day. El Cap in a day, at my age. I didn't realize back then just how extraordinary that is. Now in retrospect, holy cow. That was very optimistic on his part that I could do that in a day. I did it at 66, and that's not an advanced age, but you're losing muscle tone by that year around, and you're not in your 20s, and have to stop to eat once in a while. Didn't get the chance to do that on El Cap. So I would like to sleep on the wall. Yeah. I'd like to see what that's like, and I'm working on rounding up a partner or two to do that.
You talk a lot about the friendships that you've made through climbing. How would you describe your friendships and how they've helped you?
Well, it's been wonderful. Climbing is a wonderful community, and climbers are basically the same all over the world. They have the same kind of goals, the same kind of training, the same kinds of experiences, and so you have an instant bond with climbers all over, And so I made my own group of friends in Sacramento area, and but I've retired from teaching. I've taught all my life, and now I've retired from teaching. I'm a full-time writer, and so I can go anytime, and I choose to avoid the crowds. So I choose not to go a lot of places on the weekends or after work hours or whatever. And they can't. Most of them still work. So I'm working on expanding my partner base to. Everybody hear that? I'm expanding my partner base. I want to climb in Stanage. I want to try the Gritstone, in England. I've heard so much about it from Alex and all the guys who were there. And I want to climb in the Alps. I want to climb in the Dolomites. I want to sample the rock all over the world. I've done a little bit of that, and I've climbed in southern France, not in the Alps, in Calanque. And I've climbed in Greece and Mexico and a little bit of Canada. But there's so much beautiful rock out there. And I'm not getting any younger.
Well, what are you doing at the festival this weekend? You've not got much time to climb, I don't think.
No climbing this weekend. No, I'm talking about my book. After I became the oldest woman to climb El Cap, I wrote about the book. We talked about how the book evolved. The beginning and the end of the book take place on El Capitan. Do you call it El Cap here?
Yeah.
Everybody here knows.
Everyone
Okay. So the beginning, it opens and closes on El Cap, that amazing day, but the rest of it is about our life together, about raising Alex and his sister. So the book came out in May, and it's being well received and well written about, and I'll be talking about it tomorrow at the festival here, and I got a bunch of interviews lined up here today, and then on my way back I'm speaking in New York City, several places about it. So that's what I'm doing here. That's why it's so short. I have to get back to New York.
Well, you have to come back and get out on the grits.
Yes, I really would like to. And I've seen so much good video footage about both standage and the grit.
And it's much shorter than El Cap as well.
Yes.
A lot more routes done.
And it's not all crack climbing. The one drawback from my point of view for the Sierra Nevada, where the Yosemite is that most of the climbing on the granite there is crack climbing.
Yeah.
And I can do it, but on a very basic level. I don't like it because piano is my thing.
Yeah.
My main source of sanity is the piano. And I just refuse to hang on a knuckle.
Yeah.
If anything happened, I could be ruined for life for piano.
Climbing's an acquired taste.
Right. So all these other places are not all crack. So I need to go try them.
Well, you should come back to the lakes and the Peak District and Scotland.
I hope to.
Thank you, Dierdre. And
Thank you for having me.
It's a really good story.
Thanks for inviting me.